everybody, welcome to Needle and Curves. My name is Micheline, and today I have a whole host of things that I want to share with you. It's all going to be focused around sewing knits, in particular sewing Kwik Sew 3766, which is what I have in my hand here. I've been working on learning how to sew knits without a dart. And the reason for that is I have aspirations to make myself several sweaters. We are in the middle of the cold season here in North America, and I want to make sweaters, and I'm perfectly okay having wearing t-shirts that have darts in them, but not a sweater. And so since sweater knits are bit more expensive than like jersey knits, generally speaking, I decided I would practice on just regular jersey fabric to get that, to figure out how it works or how it works best for my body. For this pattern, I've actually made it 3 times, and this attempt is going to be trial number 4. And in the first version that I did, which I will include a photo of, I did full bust adjustment with 3/4 of an inch on the front. I did a broad back adjustment to increase the back by 3/4 of an inch as well, because Nancy Zeman says whatever you do in the front you need to do in the back, and so I never do a full bust adjustment just in the front alone. And so I did that, and it looked okay. Actually, I like this. I like the fabric a lot. I like the look, but it's a little too close for my liking. I prefer for my knits to kind of skim my body and not show any of my lumps and bumps, especially on the back side. And so I decided I would go up in 1/4 of an inch in the next version, which is versions 2 and 3. I'm actually wearing version 3 at the moment, which is in this striped jersey. And here again, I generally like the look, but there are things that I don't like. And so using this one as an example, so I did the bust adjustment through the shoulders, and it added all of this extra fabric here, and I don't like that. I cut my patterns based on my high bust measurement, and so what that usually does is it gives me a nice fit through my shoulders and armpit and neck. And so where I get the added width that I need is through the bust area, and so by going through the shoulder, it made this area too big. As you can see, there's all this extra fabric right here. Is this garment wearable? Absolutely. That's why I'm wearing it today, so you can see. However, since I wasn't particularly satisfied, I made version 3, which I will pull Linda over so you can see. So here's version 3. Uh-oh, I'm breaking stuff. Here's version 3. Let me get myself out of the way here. And this one I really, really like. This one I did the same thing where I did 1 inch added to the front and 1 inch added to the back. And this is the perfect width for me, with this pattern. I vary between 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch depending on how the pattern is drafted. And so when I did the full bust adjustment, all right, Linda, out of the way. When I did the full bust adjustment on that version, the strategy that I used didn't give me the option to add the length the way a normal bust adjustment does. And I decided, well, I'm gonna give it a try again and add the added length. And so for me, when I do a traditional bust adjustment, I end up getting about 1 inch in length when I drop it down. If you've ever done a traditional bust adjustment, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who do not, I will insert a video that's not my own so that you can see, get an idea of what I'm talking about. But in any event, I decided I would give it a try again and add that length to see how it looks. And that is what I'm working on today. While I'm thinking about it, I will do a video completely separate from this one to show you guys how I did a bust adjustment without a dart for a t-shirt or a sweater pattern where you would need an added length. So a couple of things about what we're going to do today. Obviously we're going to do a sew along, so we're going to be sewing this this version number 4. And I decided to sew it so I can show you guys just how the process works, like, you know, what it is I do. I will be using my serger and to construct the garment, and I will be using my cover stitch machine to hem the garment. I like the look of the cover stitch hem and the serge seams because it looks professional, doesn't look like a homemade garment. Not that that's necessarily a problem, because you can obviously sew this completely with your sewing machine and come out with absolutely wonderful results. I have my toys and we're going to use those toys. The other thing that I wanted to share is that I am using an elastic foot to insert clear elastic as a stabilizer for the shoulder, and I'm going to show that as I'm doing it. If that's something that you guys are interested in, you know, for me to discuss how to use it, I'll be happy to do so. But you know, I'm not an expert yet. This is only my second time using it, and so we're really going to see how this works. It's pretty easy. I'll be working on my Brother 1034D serger, and for my cover stitch I'll be working on my Brother cover stitch 3440. And with that, I will get started. Okay guys, so what I have here are the pattern pieces for this project. Again, we are working with Kwik Sew 3766, and I'm technically making view B, which is the short sleeve option. However, because I wanted to take advantage of the scrap fabric and have as little waste as possible, I actually I made the sleeve longer. So this is the original pattern piece, which I traced off as I normally do. So this is the original pattern piece, and this is the longer version that I created. So we're gonna call this view C. I'm not exactly sure how long this is gonna be. It'll probably end up being around elbow length. But this is, you know, just one of the options we have when we sew for ourselves. So if I can show you a really quick illustration of what I did with the bust adjustment. So I followed the traditional guidance on making a bust adjustment, where I cut up through the center front, pivoted through to the armhole. Instead of cutting to the bust point this way, I actually cut from the bust point to the side seam and use that and cut in here for the hinge. And so I used this space. I was able to pivot over here to create added width for myself. And so there's added width here, which is where I normally would have added width. And then I have an added 1 inch going all the way down for the bust adjustment, giving me that 1 inch that I need throughout the width of the garment, which in this case, so this 1 inch corrects for the 3/4 inch I didn't particularly care for in the first version. And going through, pivoting to the armhole gives me the correction from the second version that I didn't like, which I went to the shoulder. Again, if you've ever seen a full bust adjustment, you have an idea of what I mean. And for those who haven't, I am so sorry. Just I'll try to post an alternative there for you. And for my adjustment from version 3 to my current version, so this is what I mean by I gave myself added length. And so I just swung it around here. So now I have an added, I think it's about 1 inch. Let's see, 3/4. So 1/2 inch. I added 1/2 inch to the bottom, which it's not much, but sometimes small tweaks make a lot of difference in how you feel in your clothes. So here's the front. Here's the back. It's still, here's the 1 inch that I added for the broad back adjustment. Once again, I went through the shoulder and I pivoted to the armhole. Put those aside. The one thing that I did not need to make any changes to was to the neckband. I chose this pattern particularly specifically because I really like the scoop neckline here. And so with all of it, all of the pattern pieces, I made it a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, as opposed to the 1/4 of an inch that the pattern suggested. So time to get started. So here's the front. First thing I'm gonna do is sew the shoulder seams front to the back. So now we now have the shoulder seams sewn, and as I said before, I was going to use a clear elastic, and so this is what I did. I have to be honest, I used to always wonder, how did they get that in there like that? Well, I found out myself, and now I can do it too. I now have the elastic in, and here, let me see if I can get it focused. So when running it through the serger, you're going to end up with a little bit of excess, so that you can make sure it goes from end to end, and so you're just going to cut that off. I have to apologize. I thought I'd be able to show how I serged this, but my daughter has my tripod, and I can't. It was just too complicated to try to do both, and so I will be certain to do that another time. So now we have the shoulder seams done. So now what's left is to do the neckline. And here I have the neckband, which I will sew together at 5/8 of an inch. And then I will press it, fold it in half, press it, and put it together. So I'll be right back. So the pattern has just 2 notches, one on each side, and of course you've got the center back seam. But to make my life easier, what I did was I added, I cut a notch at the center front as well, just a little clip right here, so that I can easily match up center front without having to, you know, do anything else in particular. Here again, I have a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, so I will sew this neckband on at 5/8 of an inch using my serger. I sure wish I was able to show you that step, but I'm not moving this camera. It's stationary, and this is where it shall be. All right, once you have it all pinned and everything, all of your notches are aligned, you want to go ahead and press it so that it's flat. Or maybe you don't want it flat, but I'm going to press mine to make it flat. All right, so the neckband is all ready to go. So now we have our seam, shoulder seam pressed and ready. Our neckline can be, our neckband can be attached. If you're like me and you've marked the center front and the center back, it makes pinning the front to the back way easy, because I've got a notch at the front and on the garment itself and on the neckband. Again, this was not included in the pattern. Now I'll find the notch that was included in the pattern, which is right here. And I usually keep the pins that I've included, like kept to keep the neckband together. I usually keep those together for until I feel it's, you know, secure that everything's all tacked down and won't shift before I take it out. So we've got one notch down. Here's the center back, easily identified on the garment by the snip there. This I will add. And then you find the other notch. On this pattern, the notches that are included in the pattern are not at the shoulder seam. So don't make that assumption. So now all of my notches are marked, and so I'm just going to go around and pin the rest, ease the rest of this into place. I prefer to do that by pinning before I go to the sewing machine, but that's just me. All right, I'm gonna pin the rest of this in place and sew it all around and be right back. So I just finished using my sewing machine to baste this neckline, and that is really a huge helper to me. I baste with whatever stitches thread is on my sewing machine at the time, and I baste it around. In this case, I base it at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and which is really interesting because the pattern is written for 1/4 of an inch, and I prefer to have it 5/8 of an inch. So this quarter of an inch is going to be used as a guide on when I go to use my serger. So if you look at it, there are no puckers anywhere. Everything is the way I want it, and that's why you want to do a basting stitch before you run things through the serger, particularly if you are new to sewing or you're not particularly confident with your serger yet. It also, kind of a foolproof way of not screwing things up. So let me go sew this neckline. I'll be right back. Okay, so our neckband is all sewn. I'm gonna go ahead and press it now. The directions say to press the neckband down towards the garment, so that's what I shall do. All right, neckband all done. Yep, so now it's time to do the sleeves. So this side, here are the sleeves. Check to make sure your notches are done. So what I usually do, I usually snip a notch also at this at the top of the shoulder seam instead of marking dots. I find that to be easier than marking circles and such. Oh, this is funny. Here's my, hopefully that comes out. It's just chalk, so that'll be interesting. One of the things that I do to make the process a little faster is I usually fold up the hem of the sleeve and the garment usually before I do the side seams. All right, so time for the sleeves. What I've done is I went ahead and folded up the hem of the sleeve already, and I pressed it and used my clapper to make sure that the seam is there, so that when I go ahead and sew when I do the whole thing and I have to hem it, that memory will be there. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew the left and right sleeve to the body of the garment. So something that you want to be aware of if you're sewing this pattern is that it does not have 2 notches in the back to mark the back of the sleeve or the back of the garment, which is something I've never seen before. They're both single notches, and so if you've experienced that before, let me know. This was my very first time seeing that, at least to my knowledge. So in any event, I'm gonna go ahead and sew the sleeves in, and I'll be right back. Okay, so my sleeves are all sewn in at the shoulder. They're sewn in flat as the directions suggested. And now the only thing that's left to do is to sew up the side seam. So I've got the whole thing sewn, front, back, sleeves, neckband. So now all that's left is the hem. But before I do the hem, I need to press these seams and make sure that they're flat and ready to go. So let's get this done. Okay, so now that I have everything pressed and ready to go, all that's left is the hem. Trim these tails. And because I pressed the hem up already before when everything was flat, it's just easy. Now it's just going to be easy for me to be able to fold it back to where it was. Just redo where the seam is, because that got pressed flat when I pressed the side seams flat. But everything else is ready to go. So I'm going to use my cover stitch machine now to hem this hem both the hem of the shirt and the sleeve of the shirt, and I'll have the finished garment to show you when I'm done. Okay guys, so I'm back with the very last part of my top, which is the having hemmed both the hem of the top. Here you go. I use my cover stitch machine to do the hem, and I also hem the sleeve as well. There we go. As far as any additional changes, I actually decided to hem the sleeve at 1.25 inches as opposed to 1 inch, because it was hitting me right at my elbow, and I wanted it to give it a little bit more room, so when I bend my elbow I don't have a bunch of wrinkling in the fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a final press, if I can get my iron where it needs to be. Come on, iron. Here we go. And I'm using my sleeve board. Oh, it's steaming up. I'm using my sleeve board for this process because it allows me to put the... Oh man! It allows me to put the... I've got some threads. It allows me to put the sleeve right around it without any puckering or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then I will show you the full garment all put together. Well guys, I finished my top, and I wanted to give you a chance to see it all done. I will be sure to add some photos of me wearing it, but I wanted to give you close-up of the finished garment in terms of construction. I didn't put a label on it yet. I probably should at some point, but and then I have a back seam, so I'm in the market for some comfortable labels. So if you have any ideas or a place on Etsy that you've purchased comfortable labels from, please let me know. I'd be interested to buy some new ones. But in any event, so I wanted to show you what it looks like. So here's a finished neckline. It lays nice and flat as we would want. Let me show you the inside. So here we go. My cover stitched hem. Serge side seams. Straight thread. Serge side seams. And the thing that I'm really excited about is the elastic in the shoulders. Once it's pressed, with it pressed down, you can't even see it there, but it's there. It's stabilizing the shoulder, and the shoulder seam will not collapse at all.